The question must be, where can we search for margin if we can't simply put up our price, which might damage our conversion rate? And if you can put up your price, you should. Everybody should be reviewing pricing to see if they're in the sweet spot. But if you're a brand with a low conversion rate, high MER, the chances are you don't want any more friction in the purchasing process. Today we're talking about refunds and returns. Should we do free returns? Should we offer refunds? So on this edition of what's now called the Better Call Paul podcast, moved on from the e-hustle, we're going to talk about whether or not in 2026 and beyond we can actually afford to be doing that, or whether we need to do it and if it really matters for conversion rate. So let's look at Amazon. Back in 2023, eyebrows were raised when Amazon started charging $1 for returns. Now, Amazon famously gives everything to everyone. They are the logistics kings or queens, and they'll give you whatever you want. Now, that was following along from H&M and Zara, who also had similar charges. So it made me sort of look and say, well, if they're doing it, there's got to be some studies behind it. Now, when you look at what are the studies behind it, there are some statistics that show that processing a return can cost retailers as much as 39% of the original order. Now, that's according to Optoro, which is a tech company, and they did that study in 2023. Now, I don't know that I've seen it reach 39%, probably, but what I can tell you is it's a pain in the bum. Particularly when we were at Showpo, we used to see returns pile up for days and weeks, and it gets upset customers. So returns are problematic. We don't really want them. And of course, refunding promotes people returning, right? So we're going to talk about that today. But I think we can agree that it's expensive and it wastes a lot of time. Now, if you have an average order, a value of under $100, you might even be better off sometimes, particularly overseas, letting the customer keep the return rather than having them send it back. So it's a margin question really, as well as an average order value question. But if you're sending goods overseas, processing a return is an absolute nightmare. So we're going to talk about refunds. We're going to talk about returns. So let's talk about refunding, all right? And we're going to talk about refunding just slightly for a moment here, because the margin pressures of late are incredible. Let me explain what I mean by that. Every year, wages go up, right? The minimum wage goes up. Your staff want pay rises, all of the above. Also, your suppliers tend to put their prices up, not down, right? For the most case, or there's a fuel surcharge, or the war breaks out and everything's more expensive. Don't you find that things usually go up? Now, most retailers, I don't know about you listening, but most retailers can't just go, oh, well, we'll just put our prices up. In fact, in many countries in the world, average order values, like in Australia, have fallen around $10 over the last 3 or 4 years. So it's actually more competitive on price than ever. So while the costs are going up, the retail spend is going down, not up, particularly of late. So that's just squeezing us. So the question must be, where can we search for margin if we can't simply put up our price, which might damage our conversion rate? And if you can put up your price, you should. Everybody should be reviewing pricing to see if they're in the sweet spot. But if you're a brand with a low conversion rate, high MER, the chances are you don't want any more friction in the purchasing process. So if we talk your margins are greater than 70 or 75%, and if your refund rate is less than 5% of your revenue, and let's just stop there, everybody needs to be tracking on their P&L, their refund rate. It's such a core metric. I've seen retailers spending 30, 40, even 50% and above of their revenue on discounts and on refunds. I'll throw discounts into that category as well. Discounts and refunds both need to be tracked on the P&L. Refunds, I've seen some refunders be up around 30%. I've seen some discounting brands be up around 50%. So you've got to think that wears heavily into your margin. If your refund rate is 20 or 30%, that's probably bigger than your marketing spend. So just because it doesn't live on our P&L doesn't mean we should ignore it. So my advice right now is to highlight these two areas on your P&L. So if you've got a 70, 75% margin, you are refunding and your refund rate is sub 5%, you're still going to have a gross profit probably of over 50, 55%. So that still ticks the box in my 50, 30, 20 rule. You can search that rule if you want, the 50, 30, 20 rule. So you're probably okay to keep going about your business. But if you're a brand that is, 15, 20% refund rate and has a margin of 70%, 65%, and you find that your gross profit is eking away down to 50, or even just you're not happy with where your net profit is. Well, if you're refunding about 20%, that's eating heavily into your margin. And what I'll often say is, if we look at that business, as we did with a fashion brand in one of our training groups recently, and she'd optimized her business and she was striving to get to a 20% net profit. All right, she's doing about $100,000 a month, striving to get to a 20% net profit. Now, she'd leaned up the business. She'd got MER under control. Conversion rate everything was going really well. We said, how are we going to get to 20%? So we said, hang on, let's lift up visibility on the refund rate. And as we did that, women's fashion, high AOV, $500 garments, refund rate was 30%. 30%. And I said, if you won't mind me saying, I said, Katie, that's enormous. We're going to get rid of that. Now, for a month, she didn't do it. And when she came back to me a month later, she said, I haven't done it yet. And I said, well, what are you waiting for? And she said, oh, well, some of my staff say the customer won't like it and it's not a great customer experience. I prefer refunds. We got to stop right there. It doesn't matter what you prefer. I'll always say this. Can we just agree that your business to get to 20% cannot be a refunder? If you want to get to a 20% net profit, Katie, you must not be a refunder. And so she said, all right, I'm going to turn refunds off. And she did. She said, how am I going to communicate it to the customer? I said, you're not. And what should I do when people really kick up a stink? Well, if they really kick up a stink, refund it. What can I do instead? Should I give 110% store credit? Sure, why not? Anything's better than a refund rate. So what do you think happened? She did it. Her refund rate dropped to virtually zero and nothing happened to her sales. In fact, she kept growing and went past the $100,000 a month mark. And guess what? Last month she delivered the 20% net profit that we'd been striving for. So this is what we talk about when we're talking about smart business. We're looking at analyzing a P&L. We're turning a business inside out and saying, where can we grow this thing? Because most of you have already looked in the obvious places. The marketing spend, overall, the discounting, the obvious places to get sales. But when we're trying to grow the profitability, you've got to turn that business inside out. And that's what we do. We turn our businesses inside out. It's what I've always done until we say, aha, we've got one. And for many of you, that got one might be your refund rate. It might be your discount rate. So let's go back a step and just say returns. I absolutely don't think you need to fund returns. I've done that study before. I've spent $30,000 funded by a certain carrier where we offered free returns with a promise that, oh, this will affect your conversion rate. It did nothing for your conversion rate. People are not buying from you because of your logistics offering. It's nice and it's important, but your reverse logistics offering is an afterthought. It's got to be a crucial part of the customer experience, but they're buying because they want to look good, feel good, lose weight, look better, whatever. Okay, they're not buying from you because you offer free returns or not. So I'm going to put a line straight through free returns. Then for most of us, okay, Amazon accepted, maybe the Iconic accepted as well. Now, I'll come back to the Iconic shortly because I've spoken to them about this very topic. So then we move on to refunds and we just go back to what I said. If your refund rate's over 5%, that's 5% of your revenue. If it's 20%, that's 20% of your revenue. It's likely to be more than your advertising spend. And if you're looking for profit, don't think about does the customer like it or not. That's marketing fluff. That's fluff down the track. Think about, I've got to get to a 20% net profit and my refund rate is over indexing. I tell you what, this is one of the things that I'm going to try. And the same goes with discounts. I've mentioned it before. It's not the topic of today's video, but the same goes with discounts. If you're discounting 20, 30%, you've got to turn those discounts right down. Those things combined will absolutely destroy your margin. Now, globally, apparel has the highest return rates. Okay, so be sure to bake at least a 5% refund rate into your business model, but that's if you're starting up. But if you're existing, go and benchmark what your refund rate is and get it under 5%, right? If you need help, we can help you with that. I always hear this, oh, but everyone refunds. Don't do what everyone else does. Don't make assumptions about other brands. Can I tell you, there's a lot of big brands I've worked for who do not. They wouldn't touch refunds because they let their product do the talking. Okay, you've got to process returns quickly. More important than whether or not you offer refunds. So my feelings on refunds remind me of the Iconic, who I was talking about earlier. Now, when I talked to the COO of the Iconic, we have had a chat about, why do you keep offering refunds and free returns and this and that? Now, he says, well, I've done the studies and we've seen that it lifts conversion rate. Okay, fair. That's fine. They've done the studies. I'm suggesting you do your own studies and turn those refunds off and see what happens to your conversion rate. I'm happy to be proven wrong and your conversion rate may drop. It may plummet. But let's also remember that the Iconic went to market with a whole lot of other people's brands, so they had to differentiate with fast delivery, free returns, etc. Most of you guys listening to me now have your own brands and you're differentiating with product, but all of a sudden you introduce logistics in the mix. It's not your differentiator. It is for Amazon and Iconic. It is not your differentiator. So if logistics isn't your differentiator, if reverse logistics isn't your differentiator, if refunds is not your differentiator, which it shouldn't be, then think about not doing it. So what I would say above all is when you're trying to grow the profitability of a business, look at what squeezes that margin down. As the saying goes, where attention goes, money flows. And most of you listening now, you're going to look at your P&L, your profit and loss, and you're not going to see refunds even tracked. Start by tracking it. If it's over 5, 10, 15% and you're searching for profitability, that could be one of the best tips I ever give you. Turn your refund policy off and watch that conversion rate stay the same and you get a little bit of extra profit. If you're $1 million a month business, hey, I might have just made you 50 grand, 100 grand a month with that tip. I have seen it go like that before. Now, as for free returns, I don't think there's many of you that can afford it. So can we just say, do the customers like it? Of course they like it. But can most of you afford it? No. Most brands are struggling to get to the 20% net profit. I strongly suggest you don't do free returns if you're searching for a high profit, and also if you have a lot of returns coming in, a high refund rate, and you're paying for them, or you could be absolutely crippled like Katie was being as well. All right, guys, if you liked what I'm on about today, watch some of my other videos. We've got YouTube, Spotify, Apple, lots of free tips on my website, learnecommerce.com, and follow me on Instagram at Paul Waddy eCommerce. As always, give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share. Let me know what else you want me to break down in 15 minutes or so. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys next week.